Welcome into a brand new series here on the channel. We're going to be doing some division breakdowns for this upcoming season in NFL, predicting some records, making some hot takes, and just kind of you guys get a feel for teams we're high on, players we're high on, teams we're low on, and really at the end of every division here, we'll have our playoff teams and Super Bowl winner preseason, and also a look at who we think will be picking really high next season next offseason in the NFL draft. And for the first episode starting in the NFC South, we'll go ahead and start things off, Noah, with a team that will be picking high in this upcoming year's draft. Tell me what you think about the New Orleans Saints for this upcoming season and why they're going to be dead last in the NFC South.
Well, I think first and foremost, when you look at it, Derek Carr retirement kind of stunned. I think with Tyler Show, they were, or Shaw, I guess I should say, they were looking more at a guy that they can develop and not start right away. And he's going to get thrown to the fire very early because I don't think they have another option really at quarterback unless they throw Rattler out there. But if you're going to do that, why not just go ahead and see what your draft picks got? They don't have a great schedule. All these teams do have series with NFC West teams this year, which is a very, there's not an easy game in the NFC West, in my opinion. You have obviously the Cardinals, who might be a little bit of a lesser team, but I still think will be better on paper than the Saints. Gage, if you want me to go ahead and get into the record I predict there for the Saints.
Yeah, go ahead, because I think we're really similar, if not the same.
I have a 4-13 record with the Saints, and I struggled to find them 4 wins on this schedule. But
a couple wins that I picked out of them, I was like, it kind of came from just some generosity from my heart. I could have easily chalked this up as 0-17, but we don't see that anymore, like the Cleveland Browns there in our earlier time watching NFL. So I do think they'll muster out a couple wins. A couple things to think of, right? Kellen Moore is a good offensive coach. So whether it is Tyler Shuck, Rattler, it's still Kamara, it's still Chris Olave, it's still Rashid Shaheed coming back from injury. So they have a competent offense with a pretty good offensive line. I think they'll outscore some teams on maybe just a week where the offense goes dud, or maybe travel, a long stretch of games for teams, something like that, where they'll run into a couple wins in this upcoming season. But I as well have them 4-13. I think 2 of our wins for them, you and I both have similar. The Carolina Panthers late in the season or early, whichever division game you picked, and then the Tennessee Titans late in the year as well. So tell me about the other two teams that you had them winning, because it's kind of where we break off here a little bit.
I have them beating the Dolphins because I think the Dolphins, when we get to that schedule release, I think that's going to be a dumpster fire of a season for the Dolphins. I think it's time to break it up there. So Saints, who I think will be a little bit more, and they play later in the season, so maybe a little bit of guys finally starting to gel there. And then I have them beating the Titans, correct? I like them beating the Titans just because rookie quarterback Cam Ward, it'll be later in the season. So I think the Titans, their best receiver is 31 years old. So you're going to be seeing a little bit of, I don't know, maybe some young guys getting a chance towards the later of the season because let's be honest, I don't think the Titans are going to be a great football team this year either.
Yeah, probably a team similar record-wise here to the Saints in the later year coming up. But 2 wins that I had for them, one being a pretty good win, the other do what you want with it. But the New York Giants, I think they do snatch a win there in the early part of their season. I just can't. I don't know what Russell Wilson looks like and where their offense is with that. And then their best win, in my opinion, that I have for them at least, is the New England Patriots. I think you and I are both high on the Patriots, but it could be a team that sees some bumps and roads. And I could definitely see them being a team that drops an easy one to a team like this kind of at the beginning of the season. So the thing that is crazy to me about the Saints, and maybe it comes with the Derek Carr retirement, I don't know, but Kellen Moore, in my opinion, is a good coach, and I think he's getting himself into a rebuild and just a bad fit. Like, I could see things not going very well here for the first couple years of his coaching career just because they don't have the talent on the roster, and he's going to be back to a coordinator position here within 4 or 5 years because he picked the wrong job.
Yeah, I hope that isn't the case for Kellen Moore. I thought he was phenomenal this past year in Philly. But in the sense of like you said, there's not enough talent on the roster, but also you're in what I would consider kind of a lesser division when you look amongst other divisions. So it's going to be harder to steal that number one pick every year because you're going to want to go out and beat the Panthers or the Buccaneers and the Falcons. And those are all teams that every given week, I mean, they could be any team, but at the same time, they could lose to any team, especially talking about the Buccaneers because, I mean, the offense is, I mean, phenomenal. Defense is sometimes questionable. And then if Baker Mayfield decides not to take care of a ball one Sunday, you're looking at a team that, like the Saints, that could come in and steal a win at any point. So it will be in that division with how not top. I guess they are kind of top heavy, but where there's not like a huge gap between top and bottom skill wise, you're looking at some wins that probably shouldn't come their way, but they get these teams twice a year where they might be able to squeak out a win.
Yeah, and the positive for them in this division, yeah, like you said, there's some weeks Baker comes in, a couple interceptions, a couple turnovers. Can you capitalize on it? We have yet to see a full season from Michael Penix. It seems like majority either loves him or hates him. And then Bryce Young, which version of him are you getting? The beginning stages where he gets benched for Andy Dalton, or the end of the year where, hey, it's carefree football, we're 4 and whatever at that point in the year. And I could just kind of go out and play free. None of these games mean anything. So this, they could definitely sneak their way in to maybe 6 wins, maybe 7 I think is their ceiling, but definitely seems like you and I are both in agreement. Pretty low floor. You and I both 4-13. New Orleans Saints, bottom of the NFC South for this upcoming year. Sorry,
What
Saints
would you say?
fans.
What would you say ceiling is their gauge with their wins? I'd say 6 is their ceiling. I don't think they get any
Yeah,
higher than 6.
yeah. I think 7 is like a phenomenal year. Like that's pushing it too. I would say 6 is a pretty comfortable number. Like you said, 4 is kind of right in the middle range of what we're thinking could be a team 2-3 wins. You just don't know. And Tyler Shuck, I don't know. He's 45 years old, has had 3 careers in college, early second round picks. So I just don't know what to expect from him, specifically in the NFL. So it's a team with a lot of question marks. I think they're finally buying into the rebuild, which from a franchise standpoint is good. I think it's time to fully hit the reset button and start over with that team because they've kind of been in purgatory here for a very long time, really ever since Drew Brees left. Next team on this list, the Carolina Panthers, who we just mentioned. Bryce Young seems like the beginning of the year. It is not pretty, and you're getting benched for Andy Dalton. But then later on in the year, builds on some phenomenal games week after week. And now Panther fans have a little bit of life coming into this season with a very high draft pick in Tedero McMillan to come in and play wide receiver 1. They spent their money pretty wisely in free agency this past year. So I think this upcoming year is either going to be a year that defines them and pushes them forward in this division, or they kind of stay in that middle ground, and it really all lies in the hands of the first overall pick, Bryce Young, and Dave Canales, obviously last year being his first year coming over from the Buccaneers. So, Noah, where do you have the Carolina Panthers for this upcoming season?
So I have them at a 9-8 mark. Actually, in the sense of what I'm looking at from the other teams, we just covered the Saints. We'll cover the Falcons and the Buccaneers. But in the sense of what I'm seeing out of the division and some teams they play in the out of conference schedule, I really, really like the way they look, the ability to squeeze out some wins maybe they shouldn't. I have them at 9-8, and I think like some bigger wins. I think they'll split with the Buccaneers, and I think they'll actually steal both from the they'll split with the Falcons as well that I have here. So I think, if you can go 500 in your conference and squeeze out a couple, and I think they will split with the Panthers. So that's 3 wins right there. You pull out 5 or 6 in your non-con games and you're looking, or non-division games. I think you're looking beautiful.
I think you and I kind of noticed a trend that we're going to be excited to bet on this upcoming NFL season with this division playing NFC West teams, right? It seems like, at least when I was going through the schedules, it's hard to give a win to these teams that, in vice versa, the NFC West team traveling to NFC South, and then the South teams traveling to the West. Seems like every time I saw those games on the schedule, I was picking the home team no matter what it was. And of course, some like 49ers are obviously going to beat the Saints no matter where you play. You could play at a local high school field in Nebraska. It doesn't really matter. But you actually are a little bit higher on the Panthers than I am. I had them at 7-10, third in the division. I would assume that you have them second with the. So it seems like it seems like this is kind of the NFC South discussion for this upcoming year. You're going to have 50% of people who believe in the Bryce Young, not resurgence, but for him to continue to build on and be a really good quarterback in the NFL. With that would come more wins for the Carolina Panthers. And then you have the other sort of people who are splitting off, kind of buying into the hype of Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons. And then, not getting ahead of ourselves, but you and I, both number one team, people will put it together. But it seems like these 2-3 spots are where people are going to kind of go back and forth about which one is going to be which. So for me, I am a Michael Penix. I believe in the hype. I believe in the Falcons this year. Not to say that I don't believe in the Carolina Panthers, but like I said, I have them at 7-10. I think that while I love their offseason, like I said, there's just still too much uncertainty with Bryce Young. I don't know what I'm getting. I saw what he looks like at his best, but I've also saw what he looks like at his absolute worst. And his games at his absolute worst, I mean, you're not going to be winning any games against anybody. I mean, you get Bryce Young like you did at the early part of the season last year, they're not beating the Saints. But if you're getting him towards the later end of the season, you saw him last year. They took the Eagles down to the wire in a home game, took the Buccaneers down to the wire in a home game as well that they lost in overtime. So they could be very competitive when he's on. So it lies all in the hands, I should say, of Bryce Young this upcoming season. And they went out, done well to surround him with pieces. Leggett, their first round pick last year, a little shaky. You'll see if he takes the jump. Brought back Thielen, like I said, McMillan. So I don't know, man. I think it's got to be the defense as well. It's not all on Bryce Young. The defense has to get better, and they spend a lot of money in free agency on that side.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting division, that 2-3 spot between the Falcons and the Panthers. And I guess why I side with the Panthers is, Bryce Young's now kind of technically a veteran, in my opinion. He's been in the league. He's done it before. We saw glimpses of what he can be, and I think he's finally going to have that year where he can solidify himself as, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he's an average starter, and that's what he can be. He can be a serviceable quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I agree. It's just time will tell on that one, and I said people either believe in him or they just think that it was a good stretch of games. We've saw it with quarterbacks before, and specifically Justin Fields there with the Bears, right? For fantasy purposes especially, he had a really good late stretch with the Bears, and then he pushed his way up into like fifth round in terms of fantasy. But real life, a lot of people were getting excited about the Bears going into that season, and it didn't amount to nothing. So I kind of see a similar storyline there with the Panthers and Bryce Young. So Carolina Panthers, number 2 for you in the division, 3 for me, and then obviously we'll kind of flip-flop here talking about the next team. No, I'll kind of let you start off here with the Atlanta Falcons because you have them getting off to a pretty rough start here, and I can completely see it happening if they're not very competitive in their first 3 games of the season opening it up.
Yeah, Falcons had no luck in the luck of the draw, as some might say, to start that first 6 games of the season. I personally don't have them getting a win till week 7 against the Dolphins. They started off with the Buccaneers, Vikings, Panthers, Commanders, Bills, 49ers. Commanders, Bills, 49ers, I don't know if there's a chance in hell they win, and I don't think they're beating the Buccaneers to start the year. So you're looking at Vikings and Panthers, and this is where you and I kind of flip-flopped, as we said, with the Panthers. You liking the Falcons over the Panthers, and I like the Panthers over the Falcons. So I don't see them winning a game in their first 6, especially if they lose to the Panthers week 3. I mean, you are looking at a rough next 3 weeks where that locker room is going to be in such turmoil because, shit, we just lost to the team that's usually the bottom feeder in this conference, right? So I don't know if other people look at the schedule and say, oh, there's 2 wins there. I don't see an easy win in that first 6 games. Obviously, down the stretch, I think they'll win games and probably steal a couple that they shouldn't win because they'll get a little hot and be into that wild card push there. But right now, I have them at a 7-10 record gauge, and that's with starting off 0-6. So not a terrible season if you put in the fact that I don't think they'll win a game in their first 6 games.
Yeah, and really kind of the only difference in our schedule is the first 6 weeks, I think. I mean, we haven't just sat down here and went week by week. Well, I think they'll win this week, and I think they'll lose this week. But it's really those first 6 weeks, and you bring up a great point. It's like if they don't even if it's through the first four, start 2-2 or something like that, it could be something where it's straight downhill, kind of a snowball effect, and things go really south because we've saw this before with this team. Talent, right? Drake London, Pitts, Bijan, Kirk starts the season last year. They beat the Eagles early in the year last year. It's just and once again, like Bryce Young, what are we going to see from Michael Penix? We saw him later in the season because of the whole they start Kirk Cousins, all that stuff, but we got a chance to see what he can be. I don't know. You say 0-6 to start. I say 3-3. With I would have to imagine that Commanders, Bills, 49ers in a 3-week stretch is probably one of the toughest 3-week stretches in all of NFL this for any team this upcoming season. Specifically them. First year quarterback starting every single game. It's so weird talking about Michael Penix because he does have NFL experience, but not in the surplus of sample size that you can make any takes or opinions on. Like I just talked about him as a breakout player because I think he'll do well over a 17-game season, but we just don't know yet. Whereas Bryce Young, we've at least had, 10, 12, 15, however many games it's been, and we've saw what his highs are and we've saw what his lows are. If Michael Penix comes out and his lows are really low, yeah, this could be really bad really quick. Those first 6 weeks I gave him the wins over Tampa Bay, Minnesota, and Carolina, but that's a team, that I have them splitting with the Buccaneers. So if you flip flop the week 1 win and loss, something like that, it could be very shaky for Atlanta very fast.
Yeah, and that's the question with Penix is I think, in my personal opinion, when I look at these sophomore year, and I don't even think this is a sophomore year, I still think this is halfway through the season. It's his rookie year. You're going to see a little bit of things where people have watched him on tape, and he's going to have to adjust to how teams are playing him because they have film on him and they see what he likes to do in the NFL. So those first 3-4 games in the NFL this year where they have tape on him, I think they're going to be a little bit rough for him. So that's the part where if you don't take care of the football, it can get really, really messy in the early season because obviously your offense isn't fully clicking yet. There might be still some questions on defense. What are we doing in this situation, so on and so forth. So if you don't play clean games at the beginning of the year, that's whenever you can start your season on that downhill slide, and that's why I kind of have them starting off 0-6. A big win I do have for them is just beating the whenever they play the Panthers and the Saints later in the season. I think they will sweep the Saints. And then the Panthers, I think they'll split with them. So I think those are going to be big wins to try and get them into the hunt, I guess I'd say. But it's going to be kind of questionable for me on them, Gage.
Yeah, 9-8 could sneak you in the playoffs for the NFC. That probably would not be the case in AFC. We usually see the wild card teams there 10, sometimes pushing 11 wins. I imagine when we do the AFC, we'll get a couple teams like that where it's like, how do we have almost 4 teams in the same division with 10 wins? I think something to think about with the Atlanta Falcons is they went out and invested 2 first-round picks this past season in the draft on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Walker, one of my favorite players in the draft. I think he's a difference maker from day one. And then they traded back into the first round, giving up this upcoming year's first draft for James Pierce Jr., edge rusher from Tennessee, and that's the position on their defense where they struggled mightily was edge rushing, getting to the quarterback, causing pressure, and it doesn't matter how good your secondary is if the quarterback has a ton of time to throw, somebody's going to get open eventually. So I think a lot of it will rely on the defensive side of the ball, and if those guys can create the pressure that the Falcons have been missing for a while, because A.J. Terrell and Simmons and people in that back end, they can't do it by themselves, and they also have a pretty weak linebacking core, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it resides in that defense. I mean, that's very cliche in football, defense and quarterback play. But Noah, it sure helps when you have a guy like Bijan Robinson to take the weight off you in your first full season as an NFL quarterback. I think Bijan is going to have an unbelievable year for them.
Yeah, I hope he does. I feel like sometimes was underutilized in the offense, especially when he was first drafted. I don't know if it's to say that he's very similar in the sense I feel like he is a guy that is athletic enough to be similar to Jahmyr Gibbs on big playability, and I don't think the Falcons have used that as much. And hopefully they knock into the tape of the Lions and say, okay, how are they scheming this guy to maybe catch a pass out of the backfield and get some yards? I mean, I don't know how many times I watched them throw a little flood route to him on 3rd and whatever, and the receivers aren't stocked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all you got to do is give him some time. He could make the play. It, just very, very difficult to watch how the Falcons have used. And I mean, even we could even go into Pitts as well if we wanted to get into it, but we won't go all the way that deep. But just very, very rough to watch.
Yeah, I think half the battle was Arthur Smith, right? He was the head coach there when a lot of those guys were coming in on their rookie years, London, Pitts, Bijan, and he just couldn't utilize him. That's why he got out of Atlanta pretty quick. So that's going to be the challenge for their offensive coordinator this upcoming year, Zach Robinson, from the Sean McVay coaching tree, to be able to maximize these guys' potential. And I think we finally saw that with Drake London this past year. He took the jump. So hopefully this year, maybe it's Kyle Pitts taking that jump. Bijan is, I'm not going to say he needs to take a jump because we've saw how good he is, but I don't think we've also saw how great he can be, right? He's definitely nowhere near what his season, his career season peak will be, if that makes sense. I think he has a lot more in the tank in terms of statistics for a year, yards, touchdowns, yards per carry, everything. So half the battle will be Zach Robinson, their OC, putting things together for Penix to utilize all these weapons on that offensive side of the ball. So ATL for me, Noah, I got them 9-8. You said, say one more time, third for
10
you
and
with
7.
Or
7 and 10, sorry.
7 and 10, yep. So Atlanta Falcons, man, another team similar to Carolina. A lot of teams are going to be flip-flopping. And Noah, number one for both of us in the NFC South, and a team I think that everybody's finally ready to give the recognition in terms of preseason kind of predictions and who's winning the division, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The past few years, I think media, analysts, whoever, has kind of not been comfortable giving them the preseason deemed division winner, right? A lot of people last year were saying Saints and some Falcons that were high with Kirk Cousins, but it ended up, and we saw how dominant that Tampa Bay was in the division, making the playoffs, everything like that. And it's to no surprise, right? We saw how good Liam Cohen was there this past season, where he now has moved on to Jacksonville. Baker Mayfield took a pretty good leap last year in terms of his career. And then Mike Evans, Hall of Famer, automatic 1K yards. Godwin, you drafted Mecca Ibuka, McMillan, who came on late, so a really stable offense. And then the defense, really solid everywhere except the secondary, which had a lot of question marks. And I think that was kind of the thing with the Buccaneers last year, was they would just get shredded in terms of opposing quarterbacks throwing on them. That was kind of their downside. But Noah, getting to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let me know what you're seeing and why you think that they'll win the division.
I have the Buccaneers at 10 and 7, Gage, and it's pretty simple. You win the games you're supposed to win, and you can afford to drop the games that the team's just better than you. I think if the Buccaneers can get on a roll, they can keep Baker Mayfield up, healthy, and they can keep him from turning over the football. I think they're in a good position to go out and take care of business in the sense of our offense. I mean, look at the weapons they have. Like you said, Evans, Godwin, McMillan, Ibuka, I'm blanking, Bucky Irving. I mean, they have
Bucky,
so many...
we didn't even talk about the running backs. I mean, Bucky Irving, in all seriousness, Bucky Irving might be my favorite player in the NFL. It is dead ass a coin toss between him and Devon A-Chain.
I mean, I'm serious in the sense of they can dice you from each angle of the field, and especially when Baker is on, their offense, they might see a little setback in the sense of Cohen's gone, but he built that base, the foundation. He gave the other guy the keys and just said, hey, look, this thing's a Corvette, go run it, because they have it. They have it offensively.
Yeah, and the upgrade now to the offensive coordinator, like you said, it's in-house at somebody who already knows the foundation of it. Josh Grizzard, their passing game coordinator, is now upgraded to the offensive coordinator, similar enough to what the Lions did, Noah, where Ben Johnson leaves. They don't really go out of house, just kind of upgrade guys, and it funnels up. And funny enough, the Lions coordinator now, he came out and said, why would I change anything? It's not broken. So I kind of see similar vibes there with Tampa Bay. Why would we change much when statistically we are one of the best offenses here in the past years? I just talked about Liam Cohen and his offensive rankings last year for that offense in Tampa Bay. I was talking about Trevor Lawrence, but I mean, statistically, they were top 5 in a lot of offensive categories for the NFL. And like you said, if you win the games that you're supposed to win against Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans, it gives you opportunity to lose to some of these powerhouse teams in the NFC in the regular season. Like you said, the Eagles coming into town there early, week 4 it is, they play Philadelphia at home, which will be a huge game. One thing I wanted to say, we were talking about how this division plays the NFC West. Out of all the teams in the NFC South, this is the one team I think that competes and can beat all of those teams in the NFC West, which is why it's really easy to push some wins on their schedule this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, I have them at 10 wins, but there's nothing saying that. I mean, I gave them some losses where I just thought it's the NFL season. You never really know what's going to happen. So they could very easily, they take care of business and don't split with, if they sweep the whole conference, both games to each team, you're looking at a 12-win, 13-win season this year. No doubt, no questions. I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen with the Buccaneers because we all know the whirlpool of the NFC South and how crazy that is. But in the sense of if they take care of business against, maybe they do sweep the Panthers, maybe they do sweep the Saints, maybe they do sweep the Falcons. You're looking at 2 extra wins on that schedule that you didn't have marked because we know how the NFC South is.
Yeah, and just as I was looking at it, the only NFC West team I have them losing to is at Seattle the week after Philadelphia. I think that's kind of a tough game to come off to and then travel over to Seattle. So that's the only team I have them. I have them beating the Rams, 49ers, and the Cardinals. So that kind of backs up my point. I have them at 11-6. So obviously top of the division, we're not far off. I was going to touch on the fact that the more I've thought about it and it's kind of sat with me, I not only loved Emeka Egbuka as a player, I thought he was the safest player in the entire first round. At first it didn't make sense to me why they picked him because we said, McMillan looked really good down the stretch, but then it clicked with me, right? Chris Godwin coming off another major injury. Mike Evans is I think we've saw it enough times now to say he's a pretty damn good lock to miss 4 to 6 games a year. Hamstring, some soft tissue stuff. So now that was kind of the thing. When they would lose a Mike Evans or a Chris Godwin for a surplus amount of time, they were relying on these guys that weren't ready to step up in the receiver room.
Scotty Miller, guys that you have.
Yeah. Thank you. And now you just get to implement Emeka Egbuka, who later on down the line when Mike Evans retires, is gone, whatever, same with Chris Godwin, that guy is just, he's going to be the next Mike Evans. They're putting up countless 1,000-yard seasons every single year for his career. So I love that.
I think that might be key too, Gage, and I think we hit on this video in the draft, but now, if you're missing Evans for 4 or 6 games in a year, you might be able to take him off the field sometimes and say, okay, Hey, look, man, you're getting a little bit older, a little bit more injury prone. Let's give you rest on some of these downs and let us put you in, we get to these red zone situations where we need a touchdown. We know you're good for it, right? So they can take him off the field when they need to take him off the field now, too.
Exactly. And I think specifically in the earlier parts of games, right? It'll be interesting to see if Grizzard, I kind of was wondering how Cohen would approach this upcoming season if he stayed the coordinator. But now with 4 really, really good wide receivers, I wonder how many different sets we're going to see to get them all on the field at once, right? We mentioned Bucky Irving, and then they have Rachaad White, who's a really good pass-catching running back. They like you said, they will dice you from a lot of angles. I just think they have too many weapons and too many choices to pick apart the Panthers and the Falcons and the Saints too easily to not win the division. It's as simple as that.
Yes, sir. I agree with that. Like I said, they take care of business. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. We'll be talking about them come playoff time as a team that could make a push late into it, because if Baker Mayfield's on his Heisman vibe, I always say, like, who knows what's going to happen.
We saw him beat the Eagles in the playoffs. I believe that was maybe 2 years ago. They beat them and then lost to the Lions, I believe it was. So he's capable of doing it. One of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. I mean, the way I've talked about the Buccaneers, I might as well just be a Buccaneers fan. Bucky Irving, Baker, Mike Evans, all these guys, man, they're awesome. But hey, man, that's NFC South. Noah, to kind of wrap it up, right, for me, I've got Buccaneers leading the way, followed by Falcons, Carolina, and then you and I both in agreement on the Saints, and of course you and I flip-flop, so it'll be interesting to see the Panthers and Falcons there in the 2-3 spot. And then one more thing to kind of wrap it up on, it'll be interesting to see if there is a betting trend this upcoming year with the NFC South and NFC West, something that we'll be looking to hammer. So any last thoughts from you, Noah, before we wrap it up, bud?
No, I think this is a very fun series. If anybody wants to comment the division they want us to do next, go ahead and put that in the comments so we can see what we want to roll out next, division wise, whether it be AFC or NFC, doesn't matter. Just this is a very fun series to cover and kind of like a pre-look into the season of what we think is going to happen.
Yeah, and of course, this is barring no injuries. So if Mike Evans something or Baker something happens in OTAs, minicamp, it obviously changes everything, and we're probably making a separate video about it. So as always, guys, appreciate you guys watching. Like, comment, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.